Hello listeners, welcome back. It's that time of the week again and time for your favourite podcast. It's season 11 episode 16 of the Ubuntu podcast. In this episode we're going to review the Purism Librem 13 and other digits laptop. We've also got some command line love and we'll go over your feedback. I'm Martin and joining me this week are Alan.
This is not my favourite podcast.
Oh, is it not?
No.
How disappointing. And Mark.
Hello, it's my favourite podcast.
I thought it would be. So, Alan, what have you been up to since last time?
I have been playing a driving game. Martin has infected me with a driving game. It's called TrackMania Nations Forever, which we played at Ubuntu Paris. They had a gaming room set up.
I understand that's very hip with the kids these days.
What is driving games or
no,
Paris?
That game in particular.
Yes. So we played it in Paris and I'd never seen it before and it was really addictive. Had to drag ourselves away from the PC. And then we discovered actually it's a Windows game and it runs pretty well under Wine. So last bank holiday weekend, Martin and I had a bit of a hackathon and we bundled together a working version of Wine plus TrackMania plus a load of shell scripts, one of which Martin has called, with some genius, Sommelier is the name of the script because wine.
That took me a while to get. A sommelier is a person who makes wine.
It's a wine waiter.
A wine waiter.
A wine waiter.
A person who delivers wine, yes. So we made that and made it as a snap and stuck it in the store. So you can install TM Nations Forever, I think the snap is called.
Yep.
We'll link to it in the show notes. And then when you run it, it does all kinds of shenanigans that keeps a confined wine environment set up so that it doesn't interfere with any other wine setup. And it works. And it's a brilliant game. And it's quite competitive because you get medals for winning races and getting certain scores on tracks. And there are bazillions of tracks, loads of servers to play on. It's a really old game, but there's loads of people still playing.
Is it proprietary?
Yes.
I think it is, yeah.
So, it's a free to play game, but it's proprietary.
So the license doesn't let you distribute it as part of the snap.
Well,
how does that work?
It doesn't distribute as part of the snap because actually one of the things Sommelier does is he goes and gets the installer and then runs the installer. So actually the snap doesn't contain the game.
So it's similar to what things like Play on Linux do,
Yes.
except with the snap stuff around it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Very similar concept indeed.
Clever.
And on Friday night and into the early hours of Saturday morning, Alan and I streamed ourselves playing this game on Twitch using snaps of Discord and OBS Studio.
Yeah, I had a snap of Discord for the chat with you, and I was using the snap of OBS to stream and the snap of the game, obviously, plus a snap of Telegram to chat.
And a snap of Firefox to do Twitch.
To do the management of the Twitch channel and stuff. So I was all snapping away on Friday. We started like 9 o'clock.
We started at 9:30 and we finished at 1:30 in the morning. And we didn't have any issues. So we consider that successful QA.
Yeah. And a load of people, some of our listeners, joined in.
McPhail and Roger joined us, and Matthias.
Yeah. A whole bunch of people came in, and it was great because once you're a friend with someone, and it's got like a friend system, and once you invite someone to be your friend, you can then just join them on whatever server they're on and play, on the track and race against them, and you have ghosts going around the track and stuff. It's just a really super addictive game. It runs really well, even on relatively low end machines, even on like a Intel machine. It runs pretty well. It's really good. So that's what I was doing.
Awesome.
I see Samantha's got a glass of wine and is a bit quick on the draw with the stings this evening. So, she's scowling at me. Right, Mark, I believe you received recently a laptop from Purism.
I did. I received a Librem 13 version 3.
What is a Librem 13?
Librem 13 is a Linux laptop, but the major USP of the Librem 13 is that it runs entirely free software out of the box, right from the core bootloader all the way up to the OS you're running.
Everything out of the box.
Everything. They've even gone and disabled the Intel management engine so that there's not a second system running in the background, which might be compromised.
I've got questions about this stuff. Is it now an appropriate time to ask those questions?
Possibly. So I just basically I wanted to introduce the review by just pointing out that this isn't just going to be, you can't just review this as, it's a laptop that runs Linux like we normally do. The point is that actually it's what's running on the laptop that's as important.
Mm-hmm.
So ask your question. I might not, if this is about the intricacies of the Intel management engine, I might not be able to give you a great answer, but go ahead.
My question was going to be, could you verify that it was in fact disabled?
Possibly, if I knew what to do to verify that.
Okay, right, but it's not a thing that you did.
I didn't do that, no. I was focusing on using it as me.
Let's rewind. This is a laptop, so what are the specs?
So I believe the one that I got has a 6th generation i7 CPU, and it's got either 8 or 16 gig of RAM. It's got a 13-inch screen. It's got, I think it's onboard graphics. Ports-wise, it has USB 2, a USB 3, a USB-C, an HDMI port, and an SD slot. The USB-C port is just USB. It doesn't do Thunderbolt as well, although I think it will do charging when it's off. The particularly unique feature it has is hardware switches to disable the wireless and the camera and microphone. So that's 2 switches. One will disable Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and the other will disable the camera and microphone.
Where are those switches on the device?
They are on the left-hand side of the device.
Right, so where the ports are on the left.
Where the ports are, yeah. Alongside the ports, there's switches.
And what are they? Are they like push-button things or toggles? Or
Yeah, they're little slidey toggle things.
Right, okay.
So how was the out-of-the-box experience on this thing?
So you open the box, you get the laptop, you get the charger, and you get a Purism Quick Start Guide, which is about 6 pages, which tells you a bit about the sort of the startup process and keeping your laptop in good condition, keeping your battery good. It explains the mouse gestures, things like that. So it's quite a nice sort of initial intro if you're,
Yeah, and I think, Alan, you were impressed by a similar sort of pamphlet that was included in your KDE Slimbook recently.
Yeah, the KDE Slimbook came with just an introduction to KDE, so it wasn't so much about the laptop.
This is becoming a normal thing, it seems, amongst the Linux OEMs. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Turning on the laptop, it does sort of initial setup. What it does is it runs through the installer for Pure OS, which is the OS it's running. And interestingly, one of the things that it does as part of the install process is it has you set up full disk encryption.
Is that a hard requirement?
Process. Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if you downloaded the ISO and installed it separately, if you'd be able to do that as an option, but that was just part of the process, was enter your password for full disk encryption.
Okay, so it was like an OEM setup type thing.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yes, yeah, except it wasn't not like the Ubuntu OEM setup where it's actually installed and you're just configuring it, because obviously if it's doing the full disk encryption at that point, it's still got to install the OS afterwards.
Right. Yeah.
So it takes a bit longer than the Ubuntu OEM install.
Is this a graphical installer or like a text-based installer?
I believe it was graphical.
Okay.
It's been a while since I've done it now.
Okay. So once you'd gone through all of that and pressed next, finish.
Yeah.
Then you boot up and what?
You boot up and you log in and you end up on a fairly bog standard GNOME 3 desktop. Mm-hmm. It does have a little welcome screen, although I think in my experience the welcome screen didn't appear on first boot. It appeared on maybe my third boot after I'd installed some updates, which was a bit of a surprise. But that's just a sort of quick tour around what you've got there. Mm-hmm. In terms of what's installed, it has Pure Browser, which appears to be Firefox 52 with the branding removed and a few things changed.
Few things changed, as in what, like additional privacy plugins, or?
No, I think it's things like it says. So it pops up the thing that you get with Firefox saying Mozilla's going to record some information about your usage of Firefox, click here to find out more, except you click through, it says Purism is going to track some information about your usage, and you click it, and then it says it's not tracking any usage because the box is unchecked, which was a bit confusing for me at first.
Right,
but
okay.
it's things like that, I think, tweaks to settings and defaults and removal of branding.
When I installed Pure OS some time ago, I seem to remember that things like Privacy Badger and one of the ad blocking, removing plugins was like an integral part of Pure Browser.
Oh, I hadn't noticed that.
It may not be required anymore, because I know in recent versions of Firefox they've now got options in the security and privacy of Firefox itself to do that. So maybe they've just got those things enabled.
Yeah,
by
I
default.
can't see that stuff installed now.
So what other software was installed? You got Firefox, what else?
You had Rhythmbox, LibreOffice, Boxes, which is a VM
thing.
manager, Kodi,
as the media player.
I guess so. Yeah. Yes,
that's an interesting choice. I actually that's quite a good idea. Yeah.
Polari, which is an IRC client, and Thunderbird. Okay,
so the usual basic stuff with a couple of interesting additions.
Yes.
And this Pure OS is what, based on Debian?
Yes, it's based on Debian. So you have, but it's not based on Debian as in it's got some extra packages on top, and then you install everything from the Debian repo. It's a completely separate repo of packages.
So it doesn't actually point at the Debian archive at all?
No, it points at the Pure OS archive.
Oh, so does that mean there's a limited set of software available? Or is it just a mirror?
It's not a direct mirror. So one of the things that I found a bit of a bump in the road when I was just trying to use it for my day-to-day stuff is when I work from home, I have to connect to a Cisco VPN, for which I normally use the Open Connect software, and there's a plugin for Network Manager to do that graphically. But I found that while Open Connect was available in the repo, the plugin for Network Manager wasn't, even though there's a folder there. If you go into the web interface for their repository, you can find the folder where the deb would be, but it's not there. So I don't know if that's been removed for some reason or
maybe not built yet.
There. Yeah. One thing I did note was that actually installing stuff from their repo is quite slow when you compare it to installing from a larger distro with a big set of mirrors.
Wonder if their archive is in the States. Maybe that's a good reason.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah. So I had a bit of a play around just with the sort of general features of the laptop, like turning things on and off and so on. I did a sort of a bit of a stress test on the Wi-Fi switches to see how it coped with things like, if you turn it off and then close the laptop and turn it on again and open the laptop, and how it sorts itself out. And it actually works really well. It does exactly what you expect. You can turn it off and on and off and on and off and on, and then you can. There's also the sort of the soft Wi-Fi off if you do the function key, and the two work as you'd expect them to work together. So if you soft turn it off and then you hard turn it off and then you try and soft turn it back on, it won't turn back on.
Right.
Similarly, if you've got a webcam app open, if you switch the webcam switch off, it just doesn't know there's a webcam there. So that all works really well.
So it actually basically pulls the plug on the devices.
I think it physically disconnects it from the board.
Right. Cool.
Yeah, so that works really well, as it should. All the other function keys work, except I did have a problem with Bluetooth. I couldn't seem to get Bluetooth to work at all. So I opened up like the Bluetooth management app, and it said there wasn't a Bluetooth interface. It has a logo on the Wi-Fi Bluetooth on-off switch, which makes me think it's supposed to have Bluetooth. And it's also got the keyboard logo for Bluetooth. But yes, I couldn't get that to work. I'm not sure why. So the super key has a Librem rectangle printed on the key. It looks quite nice. I didn't find the keyboard that nice to type on. Personal preference there. I mean, I've typed on a few different laptops using the sort of low-profile chiclet keyboards. My favourite so far is the Entroware Apollo, and this one felt a bit spongy to me. Not my favourite, but it's workable, certainly. The only other thing I didn't like, which apparently Martin does like, is the split up and down key. So you've just got essentially the space for three keys in a row for your arrow keys.
Yeah.
And particularly having function bound
Yes.
to home, end, and page up, page down.
Yeah. Not mine, unfortunately. But other than that, I mean, the keyboard layout, I got the US keyboard layout for a reason that I'll go into in a minute. Yeah, I mean, it worked. I just told it that I was using the UK layout and it all works fine. No complaints there, really.
So what about performance, using it on a daily basis? How did you find using it?
I mean, it seems to run, it runs fast. It runs like I'd expect a modern Ultrabook to work. It got my work done. The only thing that seemed slightly, slower compared to my normal laptop was that the Wi-Fi, if I had the two laptops next to each other, it seemed like this didn't get as good a connection as my other laptop. Like if I was doing speed test or something like that, or just downloading files, it didn't seem like the Librem performed as well. I'm not sure why that was.
I wonder if it's a firmware thing.
It could be a firmware thing or drivers or something like that.
Maybe it's a compromise. Yeah, well, maybe we should reach out and ask this question and get.
Yeah, or it might have just been the circumstances in my house. I didn't do a proper scientific test, but it just seemed worse to me.
Right.
What else is there to say? I mean, it looks fantastic. It's black aluminium, a matte finish.
Ooh.
It feels nice and solid. I mean, like I picked it up because I did a lot of playing around with it when I first got it, and then I picked it up again a couple of days ago just to make sure I checked a few things for the review. And I picked it up and I thought, oh, that feels nice. It's
Does it feel premium?
It does feel premium. Yes, it feels kind of MacBook kind of quality in terms of the build quality of the case. It feels better than my Entroware Apollo in terms of build quality, I'd say, and it looks it's really pretty. Did
you have any, other than the ones you've already mentioned, do you have any other software issues with the install that was on it?
I don't think so. I mean, I managed to record and edit a show on it without any problem.
Oh,
yeah. So the last show we recorded, non-live show, I recorded on this and edited it on this, and that was all fine. I mean, I'm still not particularly keen with GNOME 3 as an interface, but that's just a personal choice.
What about battery life? The one thing people often ask us.
Yes. So I haven't done a full sort of leave it until it completely discharges, but I have discharged it, so it's I'm assuming that it's calibrated fairly well, and it's telling me that it gets about 7 hours off full charge, which seems decent. But then again, I mean, the reason that I didn't worry too much about not having done that is I don't think if you're buying this laptop for its USP, it doesn't matter so much what the battery life is, because you're buying it because it's a completely open, verifiable device. You need it to have a good battery life. Yeah.
Right. And if it was, hey, you get freedom, but you get 10 minutes battery life, nobody would want it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's totally acceptable for an Ultrabook style laptop.
Yeah. And interestingly, in the getting started guide, it does suggest that if you're going to use it as a workstation, that you remove the battery rather than constantly charging and discharging it. So I've not opened it up, but I assume that means that the battery is fairly easy to get at and mess around with.
That's a good point, actually.
Right.
Question that Joe Ressington always asks, is it a right angle or straight plug into the power adapter?
I think it's straight, but I don't have it to hand.
Oh dear.
Okay. So that means it's a barrel connector and it's not charging off USB-C or anything?
No, it's not charging off USB-C. Okay. I did try and get it to charge off USB-C.
And the other question we get is, did the keyboard area heat up when it was charging in use, or...
I didn't notice any heating up, no.
Okay. And fan noise? How was fan noise?
Not noticed any fan noise.
Okay. What are the other questions we usually get asked? How long did it take to charge?
Good question. Actually, I wasn't watching that.
Is it matte or gloss screen?
It's a matte screen.
And is it 1080?
1080,
full
yes.
HD.
It's pretty decent. It's not like XPS 13 loveliness, but it's a good screen.
Right. So, considering that you're using a completely free operating system with no proprietary blobs in the OS itself, and there's no proprietary gubbins in the boot environment or and they've even stripped out the black box from the Intel package itself.
Yeah.
Did you feel that you were making any compromise in terms of the productivity you were getting out of this device on a day-to-day basis?
Not particularly. I mean, I specifically tried some things which I thought might be, not so good for a first-time user, like doing. I made sure it can play MP3s and H.264 video.
That's reasonable. People want to do that. Yeah,
that just works.
Normal people want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I downloaded files. I tried to open them. It opened them and played them. I didn't try any actually explicitly try and run proprietary software. So I didn't download Steam and try and install a load of games. Mm-hmm. It does support snaps. You can, because it's got that in the repository. You can just install Snap.
Oh, well, there we go then. That's it. Everyone should go and get one.
Well, you should install TM Nations Forever, obviously.
Yeah.
That's the new benchmark now.
Yeah. So yes, that's another option if you want stuff that's not in the pure OS store and you're not completely, you're not completely mad about everything being non-proprietary. One other thing that I should talk about is I alluded to earlier about the reason that I got one with a US layout is this has a trusted platform module installed, which based on my research, not being an expert in this field, is essentially another chip on the board, which kind of acts like a sort of a secure boot environment, but one which you can control yourself, rather than it being sort of preloaded with keys from a manufacturer. It's a system which you can configure to verify that what the system you're booting is the system you installed and it hasn't had rootkits or whatever installed in it. Now, the interface for managing this is you reboot and you press a key and it comes up with some options, and the options were something like take ownership, remove ownership, disable, enable. So I told it to clear ownership and then allow me to take ownership, and then I had to reboot and install some command line utilities, and it got me to enter a password, and I entered a password, and I might have now made my laptop more secure, but I've honestly got no idea. There's a few blog posts about a system called Heads, which is apparently what it's using to provide the extra layer of security along with core boot, but the only actual blog, the information of how to use it is about installing it on a ThinkPad. So basically what I'm saying here is this system exists and it's should be possible to make your laptop more secure end to end with this, but there needs to be more information if it's designed for someone like me to use it, because
so final thing, would you recommend this for someone who's interested in a fully free software machine? Is this something desirable for them?
I'd say if you're this isn't like you're getting a second best device because you're Richard Stallman and you want to do everything a certain way. It's you can have an entirely free software stack, and you can have the security that comes with it if that's what you need in your situation, but you also get a really good device.
How much does freedom cost you?
Yes, that's the thing. Freedom isn't free. So I think the spec I've got costs around $1,600.
Yeah,
so exactly, you're paying a premium for what you get, but what you get is a premium device.
And a bit like we've said with the other OEMs making these Linux devices, you're as much supporting the organization that's making these devices as you are, buying something for yourself.
Totally.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Thanks for that.
If you love the command line as much as we do, send us a command that will blow our minds, and we might even mention it on the show. Send your command line love to show@ubuntupodcast.org.
And now it's time for some command line love, and I believe, Alan, you have some love to share with us.
Yeah, it's a nice, quick and easy one. It's one I discovered recently. I think I found it on the GitHub trending page, which I frequent on a Friday night when I'm bored. And it's called BAT. And the tagline is BAT is cat with wings. It's basically a replacement for the cat command. And it's very much like a pager, like more or less on the command line, where you can just cat a file. but instead of using cat, you use bat. But it has line numbering. It has a header at the top with a file name in it, and it does syntax highlighting, so it knows common file formats.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it is very, very nice. In fact, it's so nice. I have downloaded it, installed it, and aliased cat to bat. So now I only use bat instead of cat. Cat is now dead to me.
Okay. So
That's
there's
great.
a glowing. Is it written in Node?
I've no idea what it's written in.
You don't care. It's just good.
No, I don't care. It could be Electron for all I know. No, it can't be Electron because it's fast. So, get bat. It's bat. Bat is cat with wings.
Brilliant. We'll have a link in the show notes.
We can never have too much feedback. Reading your feedback means that we have to come up with less content. So if you're a Redditor, you can comment on our shows through our subreddit, /r/Ubuntu podcast.
Oh my goodness, what a lot of feedback. All of you that have sent us feedback about DIY routers, we've separated all of that out into separate stuff we're going to cover together in a future show. So if you've emailed us about that, we'll get to that soon. And here is all the rest of the feedback. So, Zach Villas emailed us at show@ubuntupodcast.org with some snappy love.
He writes, here's a neat CLI app that plays music from YouTube, Spotify Premium, Google Play Music Premium and free, SoundCloud and local files. And, watcha, comes as a snap. And it's called Tizonia. Tizonia?
Yep.
I think that's what it's called. Yeah. So this is from Zach in the US, who really has no business trying to say watcha and probably makes his T wrong. I didn't say that. He wrote that.
Yeah. Tizonia is brilliant. I'm trying to use this as a back end to a touchscreen Raspberry Pi audio player.
Oh, nice.
Right. Masood Abkenna left a comment on our website regarding Alan's Slimbook review.
The power brick is fairly small. I didn't see what wattage it was, but it's 19 volts, 2 amp. You were just one multiplication away to know it. Wattage, 90 volts times 2 amps equals 38 watts.
Yeah, for some reason, the electronics I did 20-something years ago fell out of my head, and I've never had to use it since. I never feel confident doing analog electronics calculations. Sorry. Thank you very much, Masood.
Rick Shaw also left a comment on our website.
I'll do it. Hey guys, I've been following Nate Graham and his usability and productivity updates for KDE and thought it tied in well with Alan's recent KDE contribution notes. Nate is doing a great job engaging the community and consolidating weekly updates and bug fixes and usability updates, and gives helpful pointers on how to get involved. I haven't spent too much time with KDE in the past, but along with others, I'm happy to see performance gains and some rough edges getting smoothed out to provide a really polished desktop.
Yeah, it's really super. And also he uses the Ubuntu font, so that's even better.
Wow, everyone's on a KDE kick these days. It's not a good time to be a Mate developer, I tell you. Right then, Kevin Vermeysen emailed us, Go Alan.
I really like your show since I discovered it when Mr. Pope joined Bad Voltage a while ago. It was actually November last year. That was quite a while ago. The last episode, £14.5 budgie, was quite entertaining, but also struck a nerve for me. At the end of the episode, you talked about contributing to open source projects. It's something I've wanted to do for some time, but the steep learning curve, lack of documentation experience hold me back. I only managed to participate in translating some stuff to Dutch. You probably noticed from my writing style that English isn't my native language. No, I didn't.
You're not doing the accent, Alan.
Okay. It would be really interesting. No, I'm not going to. Interesting to hear a segment in your show where you give some tips where the enthusiastic beginner like me could get started. What sort of contributions are valuable for a project? How should someone get started? Are there nice communities that help with all these sorts of questions? That is a brilliant idea. We should have a total segment.
We've done this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I forget which season and which episode, but what we'll do, Kevin, is in the show notes for this episode, I will put a link to whatever episode we discussed this, because we covered a whole broad range of things.
Blimey, it must have been ages ago. I don't remember that.
If it wasn't last year, it might have been the year before, but we've definitely done this whilst I've been around.
Doing this a while.
Yeah. Okay. Kevin Walton emailed us about Hibernate.
No, he didn't.
I think his name's Brian Walton.
Brian Walton.
In the past, you each voiced opinion on hibernating PCs, but this week, two of you stated that it just isn't used by anyone and not supported by Linux and suggested that Linux can't do it. I was surprised because I certainly had Linux distributions that have hibernated, and it's one of the things I check for in each new update, and am so often disappointed. I suspend my laptops most of the time that I'm not using them, but there are occasions when hibernate is invaluable, specifically when work is in progress and the machine must shut down, e.g. battery power expired. I infer from your comments that development on hibernation mode is not just suspended or indeed hibernated, but fully extinct. I lament its passing.
To be clear, I was the one who was needling Mark about this, and my point is that it is in most distros disabled, and the reason it's disabled is because it doesn't work as reliably as suspend. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It does exist. It still exists. You can jump through some hoops and re-enable it, but buyer beware, you get to keep all the parts if it breaks. And if your laptop doesn't hibernate and it's in your bag overheating because it's not asleep, but it's actually on, you get to keep the overheating laptop and the melted thermal paste and the broken GPU.
Yeah, and when you say it's disabled in most distros, it's disabled by default in Ubuntu. It's an override that Ubuntu apply, and therefore most Ubuntu-derived operating systems also have that hibernate function disabled. But if you use something like Arch, then hibernate is enabled, and it's up to you to understand if your CPU and chipset is actually supported by the kernel for hibernate. We also have another email from Neil about hibernate.
Just thought I'd raise a hand and admit, I still use Hibernate. Is there a reason why you prefer suspend over Hibernate? Yes, it's broken. I've stuck with Hibernate largely from the days of having a clunky Windows desktop long deceased, mostly through force of habit. My Dell laptop, complete with SSD, is quick to resume from Hibernate, and it only really gets used in the evening, so I figure I might as well cut my electricity bill by fractions of a penny by hibernating rather than suspending. Yeah, I like the near instantaneousness of opening the laptop and the desktop being there and me just going straight away and then slamming. I've been known to open the lid, type something, and then shut the lid immediately. Like, it's that fast, and I like that.
Yep. I'm the same. That's why I use suspend, even though I have enabled hibernate on one of my laptops.
Weirdo.
Yeah, well, I wanted to test it. Eric T. Keys has been contributing to open source.
At the end of your show of Ubuntu Podcast 11, episode 14.5, you asked for listener feedback related to the struggles of getting into contributing with open source projects. Ubuntu Mate Welcome has a Get Involved section, but there isn't much there. Going to Launchpad and Bitbucket seems like chaos for me, having never looked into contributing to anything before. The bug log is difficult to start searching through. For example, I wanted to look at bugs since 1804 was released. Launchpad only has 7 tagged and 18 to 1804, and there's 150 new bugs, and there's no date, sort, or filter. I'm not saying Ubuntu Mate is buggy, but a system like this I would expect to have a higher number. As a final comment, if I did find something that perhaps I wanted to look at changing, how would I pull down the code and get my hands dirty? I realise that it isn't doing just one thing, a collection of packages, but how can I find out what's what? For the sake of example, the Mate panels, I realise I would probably need to look at Mate specifically like this, but how would I know?
Yeah, this is really great feedback, Eric, and it is something that I've been aware of for a while now, and I even have a draft document which is a revised version of that Get Involved page, which goes into much greater detail as to what the components are, where the bug trackers are, where the source code is, and even signposts some example projects or features that you could work on or contribute to. So one of the reasons we did the whole working lunch contributing to open source was to just take a look at what you should expect when you go to, a selection of open source projects. And I knew going into it that Ubuntu Mate is very poor in that regard, and it is something that we'll get to this cycle.
I don't think it's unique to Ubuntu Mate. A lot of open source projects expect some level of knowledge before you get started, and it's the on ramp for most open source projects is difficult because most projects are very small with a few number of developers, and nobody's got the time to rewrite all that stuff all the time. Yeah,
it's a big undertaking writing that stuff, and it still amazes me. I've said it before, when the documentation is as poor as it is, and there are so many moving parts spread across different, not just repositories, but different, websites, Launchpad and GitHub and Transifex and all the rest of it. I am amazed at how many people manage to work their way through that and make meaningful contributions despite how poor the documentation is on how to get involved. Mm-hmm. Oliver Smith from the Postmarket OS project emailed us.
You should have seen the look on my face when I learned that the Ubuntu podcast spoke about Postmarket OS, previous blog post, the one with the open source baseband experiments for MediaTek SoCs. Who would have thought that an Ubuntu-themed podcast picked this up? So, huge thanks for mentioning this. It was a joy to listen to the whole 7 Years in Tibet episode, and then I realised you're talking about quite a few other topics on the show that are loosely connected to Ubuntu or Floss in general. Oh, that's a really nice email to get, Oliver. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Oliver also followed up and said that they've got a new update on their blog, which we'll include in the show notes, which summarises everything that Postmarket OS has achieved in the last year. And boy, howdy, is this a project with some significant momentum behind it. Really impressive stuff. So come to the website and look at the show notes to find out more about what Postmarket OS has been up to recently. Andrew Heath emailed us.
You mentioned you own several Amstrad machines still. I wanted to say that only the other week I finished and uploaded some t-shirt designs stating my other computer is an Amstrad CPC 464. I wish I still had mine, but my parents disposed of them in the early mid-90s. Thankfully, after reaching out to the team at RetroPie a few years ago, they added the Amstrad emulator to the RetroPie ROM, and I can now get my Fruity Frank fix on my Raspberry Pi.
I'm going to have to look out for this Fruity Frank game. I don't remember it at all.
Okay.
Yeah. It's good that there's kindred spirits out there who also enjoyed the glorious 8-bit master Amstrad CPC 464.
I think it's nice that through the benefit of nostalgia, everyone's remembering fondly the Amstrad CPC 464. And finally, Andrew Stombow emailed us.
After hearing Alan on Destination Linux, one question now greatly haunts me. Do UK websites track you using biscuits, or do they use cookies like they do in the US? We will never know.
No one knows. Wow, that's a bumper edition.
Yeah.
Yes.
We won't be doing many like that again.
Well, I think we probably will. The amount of feedback we keep getting is brilliant. I'm loving
feedback breeds content, so if you want to hear longer podcasts, send more feedback. We'll be back next week with more news, comment and discussion. And if you want to follow us, we're at Ubuntu Podcast on Twitter. I could have got away with a mention to the Ubuntu Podcast Telegram channel before that sting played in then.